This podcast is produced by the Harwood Productions Podcast Network. To learn more about the network and to find more of our shows, visit us online at www.harwoodpodcast.com.
Well, these apricot squares make a great addition to your cookie jar. They've got a nice crumb topping, a great solid crust, all made of oatmeal and flour, and then this wonderful apricot center. Now to get started, we have to make our apricot filling. And to do that, I use dried apricots. So I have a pound of dried apricots, and I'm just going to leave them whole. We don't need to cut them up or anything like that. And I'm going to put these in this medium-sized saucepan. Then to that, I'm going to add a half a cup of water and 3 tablespoons of sugar. Now I'm going to put this over on the stove on a medium-high heat, and I want to bring it to a boil. And then I'm going to turn the heat down and simmer it for about 15 minutes. Now as soon as this starts coming to boil, I'm going to go ahead and put a lid on this and reduce the heat down to a medium-low, and then I'm going to let this simmer for about 15 minutes. Now while the apricots are cooking, we can go ahead and get our dry ingredients together. We're going to be making like a crumble topping, but it goes for the bottom and the top. So to get started, we need a cup and a half of flour. And to that, I'm going to add an additional 2 tablespoons of flour. Now I'm going to add some oatmeal, and this is just a quick cooking oatmeal. It's not the same as instant, but I'm going to go ahead and get 1½ cups of the oats, and again I'm going to go ahead and add 2 more tablespoons of that as well. And for our sweetener, we're going to be using some brown sugar, and make sure you lightly pack it into your 1 cup measuring cup. And our last ingredient, at least dry ingredient, is 1/8 teaspoon of baking soda. Now I'm going to mix these ingredients up with my whisk. You could also use a wooden spoon if you'd like. But it's real important at this point that we get all of those dry ingredients mixed really well before we add our butter. Now we're going to take a cup of butter and we're going to cut this into our dry ingredients. So what I do is I first start by taking the sticks of butter and cutting them in half. And then I rotate them again and cut them in half again. And then I can go ahead and put these together and cut them this way to make a dice. I just find that when the butter is first smaller, like these little cubes, it's easier to cut in. So I'm going to go ahead and put all of that butter into our dry ingredients. Now this is a pastry blender, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it and I'm going to cut that butter into this. Now what you'll see happen is these metal pieces kind of cut through the butter, make it smaller, and then that mixes in with the dry ingredients. So every now and then I go through and I take that butter off of my pastry cutter, and then I just go ahead and keep cutting in. Now another thing you can do if you don't want to deal with the pastry blender is take your rings off and just go ahead and kind of squeeze the butter into your hands and into that mixture, and you'll find that it also helps break that butter up. Now do you see how big these crumbs are? This is what we're going for. When we go to make our crust, we're going to be using this mixture, and it's important that that butter be mixed all the way through. And that way when we compact it down, it really does make a nice crust that you can cut through. Now my apricots are done simmering, and basically what we're wanting to do is just get them to be nice and soft and rehydrated. So what I do is I pull them off the heat, and I just kind of take my spoon here and kind of just run it through them to kind of break them up a little bit. These are going to cook some more in the oven, so it's not a problem that they're still pretty much intact at this point. We're just going to set these aside, let them cool for a minute while we get our pan ready. Now, whenever I make bar cookies, I always make a sleeve for it because it's easier to take the cookies out. So we're going to start with an 8 or 9-inch square pan like this. Now to do that, I'm going to get a piece of parchment paper. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold it so that it's about the width of the pan. And I just kind of eyeball it like this and run my hands through it to make a seam. And then I'm just going to take a small paring knife, one that is non-serrated, and I'm just going to use it like a blade and just run it down the fold like this. Then I'm going to keep this little piece because sometimes that comes in handy for another project. And then I'm going to just show you this fits right beautifully in the pan, but we've got to treat the pan a little bit. So I'm going to get some baking spray and I'm going to go ahead and spray the sides and the bottom of my pan. Then I'm going to go ahead and take my sleeve, place it right down in like that, press it out to the sides and kind of fold those ends over. Now we're going to make our bottom crust. So I'm going to take my crumb mixture and I'm going to take about half of it out of my bowl and just place it in the bottom like this. And then I'm going to use my hands to kind of spread it out. And then I'm going to press it down to compact it really, really well. We want a nice firm bottom crust. Then I'm just going to take my apricots and go ahead and put them down. And it ends up being, once you sort of spread them out, almost like a single layer of fruit. Then I'm going to pop these into the oven and they're going to bake for about 40 minutes. Now when these come out of the oven, they're going to be nice and golden brown on top like this. But we are going to let them sit and cool for about 15 minutes. Then we're going to go ahead and use our sleeve to help us get them out of the pan. So it's been 15 minutes. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take our sleeves like this and we're just going to gently pull this right out of our pan and slide it right onto this cooling rack to let these cool the rest of the way. Now you can see this is a great reason to use a sleeve because there's nothing left in the pan. You're not digging things out with a spatula. These are going to make really, really nice bar cookies. Now I'm going to let these cool for about another half an hour and then I'm going to go ahead and cut them up. Again, I grab it by the sleeves. I'm going to put this on a cutting board and I'm going to get my large butcher knife. And then what I do is I start by cutting these in half. This way you get nice even sized bars. Then I'm going to take each half and cut that in half as well. You can feel when you're cutting these, the topping is nice and crispy, which is great. So now I have 4 long fingers. I'm just going to rotate the paper like this, and again, I'm going to take one of these rectangles, cut it in half, and then cut each half in half. That way you get a nice size bar cookie that's easy to handle and really easy to eat. Well, these apricot squares make a great bar cookie. You can see they're really substantial. They hold together really nice and you have that great layer of apricot right in the center. Now, if you'd like to give these a go at home, just go to our website and visit the cookie jar show notes and I'll have the recipe there for you. And as always, if you have any questions, feel free to send me an email. I'll see you next time.